So less than 40% of adult South Africans are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. There's a new variant in town, of course, and the fourth wave is almost upon us. Last night, the president said he was moving forward with a task team to explore mandatory vaccines, saying it was the best tool to protect our health and our economy against the virus. But what would it mean to make vaccines mandatory? Who would do it? How much legal pushback might there be? Already, signs the road will not be an easy one. AfriForum today penning a letter showing its unhappiness. That letter going to the president saying any mandate would be a violation of personal freedoms. Well, let's discuss this now with Cas Coovadia, CEO of Business Unity South Africa, and also Anton van Bijl. He's head of legal services at the Union Solidarity. Cas Coovadia, I'm going to start with you. I know that business is engaging very robustly with this. We also have seen a number of companies impose a vaccine mandate. But is there, as yet, a clear idea as to what a vaccine mandate would look like, spearheaded by government? Because up to now, government has said it's never going to force vaccines. It's up to individual industry to make the decision if they need a mandate. If we're now looking at a government-driven mandate, how do you see that working?
Well, look, it's early days. The president just announced last night that the task team has been put together. We will obviously engage at NEDLAC on this. But if taking the president at face value, what he seemed to say is that government might consider instituting mandatory vaccination for people to go to certain places, public places. So if it means that to use a restaurant, you have to be vaccinated, or the restaurant will have a device that can scan your code that you can download from the government system, EBDS system. Then if the government announces that, we think that is the right way to do it. We are not saying that we are definitely not saying that everybody needs to be forced to be vaccinated. But what we are saying is that if you want to resume some semblance of normality, then you should be vaccinated. And you need to be vaccinated if you want to visit places where you would be mixing with others, and those others might be vaccinated. So, and that's what we're taking present at face value from what you said last night. We have been consistent that mandatory vaccination is necessary. Employers have the responsibility to ensure that the workplaces are safe for all their employees. The science is absolutely clear. The science says that if you are vaccinated, the chances of you infecting others are minimal. If you are vaccinated, the chances of you getting very ill and being hospitalized are minimal. So the science is absolutely clear that you should be vaccinated, and the vaccine is undoubtedly the single best weapon we have to fight this virus and get back to some semblance of normality. And that's all we're proposing and advocating for.
All right. Anton van Bijl of Solidarity, I want to bring you in here. We know that union body COSATU is also in favour of vaccine mandates, but Solidarity has some concerns. Tell us more.
Sally, it's unfortunate. If you look at COSATU, about 10 days ago, they were against mandatory vaccinations. So I don't know what happened in the past 10 days. But yeah, we are, and yet again, we see it every day that everyone, and it seems that business, South Africa as well, are starting to become virologists. I'm not a virologist, I'm a labor lawyer. And as Solidarity, we are currently against the mandatory vaccination, which is being enforced by employers on a blanket principle. So what you see in the workplace today and what's happening at companies is the employer uses a mandatory vaccination process and policy when they say everyone should be vaccinated, and the employees must come to the employer and argue why they should not be vaccinated. The government on the 11th of June issued a directive which stated quite the opposite. They said, and to a certain extent we confirm that position of government, is they stated that it's up to the employer to do a risk analysis and assessment and to specify which employees needs to be vaccinated. And then that employee has the right to state why he or she should not be vaccinated. Then there must be some sort of accommodation process where the parties try to meet each other. We don't see that happening in the current mandatory vaccination policies. We see a one-sided approach by the employer which says you must be vaccinated. We don't want to hear what you have to say. You cannot come to work. And unfortunately, we say that's illegal.
So we know we don't have to be virologists, business doesn't have to be virologists, because the virologists are all telling us that the vaccine is safe. And the reason I think that Cas Coovadia has moved to a position of supporting it is they too are realizing it's probably the only way, not only to safeguard our health, but also to open our economy again. Surely that must be a concern in terms of your workers as well. You don't want them to have to go into lockdowns and to risk losing jobs because our economy is shut, because the vaccine, or the variant rather, is running rampant.
Yes, most certainly, but there's a difference between being against and for vaccination and being against and for mandatory vaccination. We do not propose, or we do not argue for being for vaccination or against vaccination. What we argue is for or against the mandatory vaccination process, where a blanket approach is being taken by employers. So I think there's quite a difference, and sometimes the two issues are being interjected into each other. But yes, yeah.
No, and I would imagine, am I correct, that your concerns are that individual rights are being violated?
Yes, most certainly. If you look at our constitution, there are several individual rights contained in the constitution. One of those are the right to religion, or to decide on issues in terms of religion, in terms of bodily integrity. And we say that at this point in time, if you do not take into account individual needs and rights in terms of the constitution, when you have a blanket and mandatory COVID policy, then at the end of the day, that blanket COVID policy is not in line with the Constitution, and it's illegal.
All right, well, let's bring in Cas Coovadia. What Anton van der Bijl is saying is that they are concerned that it's getting quite draconian and that individual workers are not being given a chance to say why they don't want to get the vaccine. What do you say to them?
Well, Sally, information we have is that those companies that are applying the mandatory vaccination policy are doing so according to the OHS guidelines. They're going through proper process. It's only, and they're giving employees the opportunity to actually argue if they say they don't want to be vaccinated, why they don't want to be vaccinated. They're also trying to place employees that are not vaccinated into positions where they are not interacting with others. But if the business is such that that cannot be done, then the OHS guidelines do give employers the possibility of starting retrenchment procedures. Now, all of this needs to be done within the law, and we would advocate that. If any employer is not doing that, then normal labor practice and labor law must take effect. Just on this, we sure, the rights of individuals need to be protected, but the rights of individuals also need to be balanced with the rights of society, with the rights of those who are vaccinated and have a right not to, or at least have a right to have the possibility of being infected again reduced substantially. If we don't actually get as many people vaccinated as possible, as quickly as possible, we may have a very tough fourth wave, and then we go into tougher lockdowns. That has economic consequences, that has human consequences, and it's something that we can avoid by vaccinating. And so, and Sally, you're right, we don't need to be virologists. We're taking the advice of virologists, and all the virologists are telling you that you must vaccinate.
Anton van der Bijl, I want to ask, has Solidarity started any legal action on behalf of any members who feel that the vaccine mandate has been used unfairly against them? Have any of your members been fired or retrenched because of it?
Well, we actually have quite a few members that have been dismissed. We are currently consulting with them, and we consult on the many mandatory vaccine policies that's being instituted. Just as an example, Cas stated that there must be a balancing act. Just to place that in perspective, that's in theory, that's what we argue. But what's happening at this point in time? We consulted with members, and what they told us, they were actually being told that they are being discriminated, they are being called the abnormals, specifically in the workplace. They are being called that, and then they must be vaccinated by the 4th of January. If they are not vaccinated, then in essence they cannot continue working. So there is no type of balancing act. They are being told you must be vaccinated, otherwise you will be fired in essence. And so that balancing act is not happening in practice.
Does Solidarity take on any responsibility for helping to educate members who perhaps are just absorbing fake news and reacting to false fears? Is Solidarity proactive in trying to encourage members to have these vaccines? As you say, you're not against vaccines. So have you been involved in encouraging them, helping to educate people who might be fearful?
Yes, we have compiled, I think it's 2 reports, quite extensive reports, when we analyzed vaccines. You can look at our webpage that's actually published on our webpage. We have a specific webpage for the corona or for the COVID virus, when this facts and fiction is quite clearly dealt with. So yes, these 2 extensive reports when we dealt with the vaccine issues, and so to the extreme extent we have dealt with the fears of our members.
All right. And Cas Coovadia, just a last from you. With the government now essentially changing its position, saying actually we are pushing for vaccine mandates, we're no longer going to just leave it up to individual companies, but we're going to support this. That's what it certainly sounds like, and I know that there's a task team at work. Do you think that it could create more problems in a way than it would solve? Because one could argue that the state is now enforcing a particular kind of behaviour. Or would business actually welcome the support of government in terms of mandatory vaccines?
We would welcome the support of government. And look, Sally, this is undoubtedly a contested space. And if any union or any other body feels aggrieved, then they should take the employer to court and let the courts look at it, and let the courts actually make some sort of ruling on this to give it more certainty. That's what we want to do with the declarator. Unfortunately, just given it's close to the end of the year, we're only going to be able to look at that early in the new year. But we're saying that even if cases go to court, that's fine, because that then enables us to actually develop some sort of legal certainty around this. It is a contested area, so let the courts look at it and let the courts make that call on it. And if, employees are treated outside of the law, not according to the OHS guidelines and so on, then take that to court. We're not here to protect any employers who use this to actually violate the labor rights of employees. So let's do this properly, but let's be responsible about this, because we can't then complain of further lockdown if we don't take the responsibility as citizens to ensure that we use to the fullest extent possible the most effective tool against the virus.
Well, thank you so much for your time, gentlemen. Cas Coovadia, CEO of Business Unity South Africa, and Anton van der Bijl, Head of Legal Services at the union Solidarity. So lots of discussion around a vaccine mandate. And what I find interesting is that polarising this issue doesn't help us. And it's, Business Unity South Africa is also in court seeking a declaratory order to understand exactly what this means. And the union Solidarity also wants to understand because they have their workers' interests at heart. But I think you cannot question the science at this point. That is not an argument that's going to hold up in court.
Yeah, and I really hope that people use the science to actually make statements, because we're seeing lots of misinformation from politicians even, who are using information that they read online versus what we're getting from scientists and the World Health Organization.
And you know, I'm not an expert. You're not a science expert. I know who I trust. I'll trust the people who we interview as authorities, who have made it their life's work to do the research. So that's where we stand.
Yeah, this conversation is definitely not over. We'll continue to bring you more on it throughout the evening, and I'm probably sure throughout the week.